a Canadian radio sanctuary podcast.
How are things in Banff?
Banff is lovely. It's a very nice day, and we're in the famous Banff Springs Hotel, surrounded by some of the most extraordinary scenery.
Yes, it is a beautiful setting there. Lake Louise and that whole area is very beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Does it inspire you to write?
It inspires me to certainly recover from my jet lag. I just flew in day before yesterday from Dublin, and we're here with the band. We're going through rehearsals, although, tell the truth, I think everybody really wants to go skiing because we've just finished a 50-day European tour about 3 weeks ago. So everybody's feeling kind of hot and restless.
Oh, I see. How was the tour generally?
The tour in Europe was sensational for us. It was everything was sold out. We played 8 different European countries, and the new record, The Getaway, was a great success in a lot of them, including in West Germany, where it went to #1 in their chart. Mm-hmm. Very exciting.
It is a very lively album. Can you tell us a little bit about the producer, Rupert Hine? He's a well-known artist in his own right.
Yes, Rupert Hine is an artist on the same label as myself, A&M Records, and I met him in Stockholm last year. He came to a concert of ours, and although I'd heard his records, I didn't really feel he was the right kind of producer for me, and although I thought Immunity, his first record, was an extraordinary piece of production, I loved it. But as a human being, he's a lovely man, and he called me up about 3 months later with a suggestion that he should record with me for The Getaway, and immediately I agreed. And working with him, he is one of the best synthesizer players and somebody who totally understands the synthesizer in the world. I'm quite sure that a lot of the new wave bands see Rupert Hine as being one of their heroes, and working with him was terrific, and I really enjoyed it, and we're going to work again on the next album.
Some of the stories behind the songs, for example, Don't Pay the Ferryman.
Don't Pay the Ferryman? Well, that was just a little idea. As you probably know, if you're familiar with my work, I like to create a bit of suspense, a bit of drama, tell a story and paint pictures. And this particular song, although it doesn't have any kind of resolution, I wanted to create the idea of a man hurtling towards his destiny. And it doesn't have any particular parallel with me, but I think everybody has something that they feel they have to do. And this particular man has to cross this river. It's his symbol. And I like to create pictures of the things that he sees, and he has the whole image burned into his mind of the place that he is arriving at. And the trick about the ferryman is he may or may not be the man who ferries the dead across the river Styx, but he is a man that is a threat to our hero. And the thing about it is he can't pay this ferryman until he gets across to the other side, because the ferryman has a habit of cutting the throat of his passengers and throwing them in the river before they get there. So this is the thing. Although at the end of the song, we don't know if he's arrived or not, but I just, as I say, wanted to create a feeling of suspense and drama.
What of The Getaway, the title, and the cover that ties in with the runner? Yeah,
it's a movement from, on the front cover, it's a movement from the dark, stormy seas crossing an invisible line into peaceful waters. And The Getaway itself it's a song, I suppose, that makes me feel good, because I'd love to get all the world leaders together and chuck them in a room and throw away the key and tell them to work out their problems, because at the moment the leaders are, saying that war is going to happen if this doesn't happen, and you and I are sitting there waiting for the result of this particular judgment. I'd love to get all the politicians and say, listen, will you wake up to the fact that there are other people involved here, namely the general public. Mm-hmm. Although it's just a bit of a dream, it's an idea of I feel at times that, especially in Europe, we're being held hostage by all these politicians. So it's a tongue-in-cheek look at wouldn't it be great to escape and leave these people behind to work out the problems.
Indirectly, you had a similar theme and message with Eastern Wind, didn't you?
Eastern Wind was more of a lyrical attempt to combine, I think, more what was happening in Iran 2 years ago with the image of a farmer waiting for a storm to come and devastate his crops. again, that's a feeling of something about to happen, and the farmer himself would say, well, if it does happen, I'm going to fight down to the very end. You see, I'm not a specifically political person, but I do like to broadly look at universal themes from the standpoint of a lot of people who do listen to these songs. And although, to tell the truth, I probably appeal to more people around the world who don't speak English than who do, and they seem to pick up on these ideas.
That's interesting. What of the song The Revolution?
Well, with The Revolution, it's nowhere specific. I did, in my mind, set it initially in Ireland because I know a lot about the Irish history, but I wanted to create a song that worked like a film in 4 parts, and I sat down, after I had an initial idea, I just closed my eyes and sort of watched the movie. I sat at home and watched it through, and I worked out the song around it. It's a piece that I enjoy writing, that kind of a story. And there's no solution and there's no message in particular. Again, as a songwriter, I was really interested in creating a story like that. And curiously enough, a lot of countries, people in Poland, where this record is very popular, they feel that this is a song for them, which is very curious.
That's interesting, yeah. So you have a following, needless to say, then, in Poland.
Well, it's a following which is pretty restricted by the Soviet heavy hand, but I have a friend who is frequently in and out of the place, and he says this is one of the most popular records in the country. And I suppose in the last 2 or 3 years, I think around the world, people have become more interested in words in songs, especially in politically kept down places, people who are held down. And in Poland, it is an interesting thing that they've picked up on they seem to speak a lot of English over there. They've picked up on The Getaway as an album and have applied it to their own thing.
You can touch upon a number of songs on this album and place it in that same light. Liberty, for example.
Right.
The lyrics are basically simple, but yet they say it all. And the reference to the time will come when it will change again, never forget.
Well, I think at the end of the song, it's one of those things that if you look at the French Revolution, what happened there was a tremendous overthrow, and the overthrow worked. But as in all revolutions, what happens is the people who engineer them don't really think too far ahead, because usually it changes again within a decade or 20 years. But as I must point out, I'm more interested in the filmic aspect of songwriting rather than putting across any particular kind of point of view.
Have you ever done or been approached to do movie music?
I have. I've already had songs in several feature films, and I've been approached several times to write songs for, as a title track for films. For one reason or another, it hasn't come through. But we're working on various projects. I'd love to, for example, make a movie of Spanish Train. And we've made several movies down the years of Crusader and more recently of Don't Pay the Ferryman. And it's so nice to see the ideas that I had in my mind actually coming up on screen. Mm-hmm. So I think this is something that I will become more and more involved in.
It's interesting when you look over your albums, your references to almost a biblical theme in many ways. Even in the song Don't Pay the Ferryman, the thought of crossing the river, perhaps the symbol of evil there could be the devil himself. In songs such as, even though it was about television, but The Devil's Eye, and A Spaceman Came Traveling, reference to the story of Jesus, if you will, or someone such as Jesus. What are your feelings deep down when you do write? Do you intentionally want to write about this theme, the devil versus God, this sort of thing?
Well, not intentionally. You see, I believe that most people who create anything, really, art or whatever, music, they are pulling from the wellsprings of their own experience, especially in their early years. And obviously what I was interested in my early years was spiritual things, mythological things, historical things, as well as romantic things. not to the point where I was ever particularly interested in religion, modern religion at all. And it's for the individual, and I don't agree with a lot of, for example, the Catholic Church. These things are so personal, I wouldn't ever get involved in them on this kind of level. But obviously what I'm turning up within my music and my lyrics are things that please me inside, and I enjoy very much the kind of the mystical. I suppose one of the reasons of living in Ireland is that it is a very mystical country, and it's very hard to ignore it or avoid it in that place. And I enjoy working that into song.
Now, you live in Dublin. Did you actually grow up there?
No, I grew up in various countries, in South America, in Africa, in England, and more recently I was brought up in an old castle in the south of Ireland, about 100 miles south of where I'm living now.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, going back to what I was saying about the almost a biblical feel. It's an interesting and a unique mix of old stories made contemporary with contemporary music.
I suppose you could say that, yes it is. Although more recently I find myself looking at modern times much more. I think I started pulling away after the Crusader album. I felt that it was time to start pay more attention to what is happening today and even tomorrow. And I think I find that very satisfying to communicate my feelings about what's happening today, as well as being able to, I suppose it's fairly unique to a lot of songwriters today to actually start working in historical themes. I know Al Stewart does it, but there's very few other people who do it. And I don't particularly do it because I want to be unique in that respect, but it's something I enjoy.
You write songs from the heart. That's the way I know many of us look at it.
I think you're right. A song on the new album called Borderline is a song from the heart. I've no idea where it particularly came from, but it was definitely, there's an anti-war theme in there, a very strong one for me, and the way that individuals suffer in a war, especially lovers, families.
I don't know if anyone has ever said this to you before, but there are some similarities. You and Murray Head seem to ring a similar bell in my mind.
Yes, I know him.
I mean, you sound different. I'm not saying that you sound the same, but your writing style touches on some of the same areas.
Well, I think you're right there. Although I know very little about him, we recently finished a French tour, and he's a very big star in France and also in the Quebec area, so I'm aware of him, and I've met him a number of times. But he is one of those people like me who don't like pop music very much, who prefer to get into the more rock aspect and even deeper, more intellectual aspect, because there's an awful lot of people out there who buy records who are dissatisfied with the current state of affairs with music, especially music coming from England these days. I like a record that I can really bite into and enjoy getting into a very clever production and interesting words. You know, I get the impression that too many people these days are not bothering too much about any kind of intellectual satisfaction for the listener. And I know that Murrayhead is interested in achieving that as I am.
Somebody once said that was what was so pleasing about the Beatles' music, or even more specifically, in many cases, John Lennon's writing, because he could write a beautiful melody, the lyrics were simple, but there was something rough, raw, and from the heart that was being said in a song like In My Life, etc. You have that spirit there. It's nice to see that.
Well, I think you can break music down into two fairly clearly defined areas. One of them is what appeals to the heart, and one of them appeals to the body, the physical music. And disco music is physical music. If you ask anybody, you know, what a particular disco song was about, it's impossible. You'd say, well, it's about rhythm, which is that's what it's for. And a lot of new wave style music is rhythmic music with nothing particularly satisfying for the heart. I do like to combine the two. And it is more difficult to do that. It's very easy to set up your drum machine and work out an interesting and complex rhythmic song without bothering too much about whether some young lady is going to sit down at home and really listen into it and get some kind of satisfaction from listening to the words as well.
Before I let you go, Chris, basic inspiration behind living on the island?
Well, I think, John, it was when I went down to Greece about a year ago with my wife. We had a wonderful holiday. I don't get a chance for a holiday very much. And when I do get a time off, I tend to spend it at home because I'm away from home so much. But we had a wonderful time on the island. And the island is a symbol of a place to escape from and a place to return to. It's almost like the home. And I wanted to just create a really good, warm, seaside feeling of the events that one would see on an island, as well as the slightly deeper meanings of the symbolism of an island.
We all have islands of the mind, if you will.
That's right.
Yeah. Actually, even where peaceful waters flow, that takes us away a bit as well, doesn't it?
Yes, that's a song which I had a record one time, which was a superb record, which was a mass sung in Creole in South America. And it's a most extraordinary, it doesn't strike me as being at all religious. It's very moving the way these hundreds of people sing. And the instruments they use are very ethnic instruments. And I wanted to get almost like a people's choir singing on that particular song. It is, it's sort of a spiritual feeling about having peacefulness in one's life. So I'm not obsessed with, covering up my head and being happy and all that stuff. But that particular song, the way I wrote it, it seemed to come out in that way.
About the tour, where do you begin? Do you start in Vancouver?
No, we start in Calgary on Friday, and we play the Edmonton Coliseum on the 9th. And on April 11th, we play the Queen Anne Theatre in Vancouver. And then we go on from there, Saskatoon, Regina, Winnipeg, Toronto in the Maple Leaf Gardens, Ottawa, Montreal Forum, Quebec City, right across to the east coast of Canada. And then we go back into Europe. We've got a couple of... Probably find this quite interesting because you've heard of Men at Work, what's his name, John Cougar.
Yes.
People like that, they're all superstars over here, but I'm headlining a big festival in Germany, two days, and all these guys are supporting me. Quite interesting to find how things switch around.
Yes, well, that often happens, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like when Men at Work toured with Mental as Anything supporting, and I understand in Australia it's the reverse.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy to say that Don't Pay the Ferryman, of which we spoke, is now breaking in a very big way in America, and it looks likely that finally the problem that I had of profile there is going to be out the window.
Mm-hmm. I know the song did very well in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've always had good support here, and we wish you good luck. Be nice to see you on the 11th.
All right, John.
Good.
All my best wishes to you and the workers and the listeners at CFMI.
Good. Thank you very much.
Okay, John.
Bye-bye.
Bye.